Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me for this, our Match Week 9 preview of the Premier League season, Sam Ingram from Betting Expert and BJ Cunningham. And we have a really fun slate this weekend in the Premier League. I think all 10 matches are quite fun to dive into. And we also have a clear headliner, a massive match at the top. It's actually a 12:30 kickoff on Sunday afternoon over here in the States, and it's Arsenal and Liverpool. Liverpool top of the table. Arsenal are sitting 4 points back, so it could be a must-win situation for Arsenal even this early in the season. But BJ, the thing I'm looking at with these two teams, and you would never say this about Arsenal and Liverpool of previous iterations, is there that much of a difference between these two teams right now in the way they want to play? Because I don't think it is, and I think that's what is going to lead to where this conversation goes. But the odds are Arsenal plus 140 is a lukewarm home favorite. Liverpool plus 190 on the three-way line, and the draws plus 240. Because I feel like Liverpool kind of wants to play the way Arsenal does right now, or vice versa, I guess you could say, because Liverpool's doing a better job of it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The thing about Liverpool right now, what was interesting, what they did against Chelsea and what they've kind of been doing to a lot of these teams that like to press high, especially in a man-to-man fashion, is they're playing way more direct from goal kicks instead of just trying to strictly build out of the back with short passes. And then when they do build out of the back, it's usually balls out wide, which is a conservative way of doing it, because if you lose the ball, with the ball being out wide, it's a lot better than the ball being in the center of the pitch where teams can attack you right through the middle. So that's why you've seen Liverpool's defense be so good, is that, if you're constantly just, if you're playing direct balls and giving the team the other ball and letting them build up through your mid block, it's harder for them to play through. And then when you lose the ball in wide areas, it also makes it harder for teams to actually create chances. So, we finally have a Liverpool total below 3 now, which I think is correct. I think this total should be set at 2.5. As far as the Arsenal price, I have Arsenal projected at plus 120. I don't know if Saka is going to play. He's 50-50 right now. He hasn't played in the last 2 matches. And the other thing is Saliba is injured. And I know people will probably point out a lot of the stats of when Saliba was out over the second half of the season for Arsenal 2 years ago. But you have to remember that all of Arsenal's other center backs were injured as well, and they were playing Rob Holding for most of that season. So I don't think you're going to see Arsenal's defense just take this drastic fall off like it did 2 years ago. They'll slot Ben White in there, and they'll probably have to play Thomas Partey at right back, because I think Jurrien Timber is probably also going to miss this match. Tomiyasu is potentially out as well, and you can't really play Jacob Kiwar in that right center back role because he's naturally a left back, left center back type of player. And Gabriel is also in that left center back role. So it's interesting to see what Arsenal will do. But yeah, I mean, if I were to play something, Michael, I think the 0-0 is definitely in place here and definitely in play. And if I were to play anything in this match, it would be that or both teams to score no at plus 125, because these are the two best defensive teams in the Premier League right now. I know Arsenal's overall defensive metrics don't look good, but they've also had 3 red cards, another red card over the weekend against Bournemouth. But yeah, I think this is, like you said, kind of a stalemate with two teams that are wanting to play a little bit more direct and play very solid, compact defensive blocks. So I think it's going to be pretty hard for both teams to create chances.
Yeah, I agree, and jot it down. I like the draw and the 0-0 here. One, if you want to split your stake or just play the draw, if you're a little bit smarter than me, go right ahead and do it, because I think that these two teams, this turns into a little bit of a stalemate, a rock fight. And I've always had this theory about, especially in the new age of the Premier League, since Pep ruined everything, decade ago or whatever at Barcelona, now 15 years, that when two teams that are two of the super elites meet, right, that we're going to see with Bayern and Barcelona in the Champions League, whether when City plays Arsenal, the game becomes so efficient and so mistake-free that it just never gets out of first gear, Sam. And that's what I'm expecting here. I don't think that this, not to be a buzzkill, but I just don't think that this thing is going to be rampant or fun to watch.
Yeah, I've got this down as a draw at plus 225. Bit more of a lean for me. Like BJ mentioned, likely without Saka, Saliba, Calafiori, Timber, Tomiyasu, Odegaard for injuries and suspensions. That has to be a really big concern. Liverpool have come in terms of prices, plus 260 nearer the start of October, now to plus 188 on the back of both that injury news and also Arsenal's loss to Bournemouth on Saturday. Saka and Saliba, without them, that could be pivotal to Arsenal's chances here. And that red card for Saliba, by the way, like a long way away from goal. What did you think of it? Were you having that as a red?
It is what it is. I mean, I don't know. I feel like every Arsenal red has gone against them. I think you don't want me to go down conspiracy theory lane, but I think the Premier League is out to relegate Everton and to try to force Arsenal to not win the Premier League. But I digress.
It was just interesting to me because like we see that a lot, and the fact that he's give that as a yellow on the pitch, I think that's probably what will frustrate Arsenal fans the most. And then for the TV cameras to then zoom in on Howard Webb in the crowd, I thought that was hilarious because this Arsenal fan base, like that is going to send them over the edge. I thought that was quite funny. But yeah, so Liverpool fresh from turning Chelsea over, which I'd argue they were good value for. But now going to the Emirates, it's a different kind of test in recent seasons, and I'm not convinced how good Liverpool are in terms of Premier League winning capabilities. And after that Chelsea performance, I'm still not convinced. But I think maybe that's because I'm also not so sure how good Chelsea are either. But I think this is where they're going to kind of prove themselves, and where they may prove a thing or two on Sunday. I saw Arteta said last night after the Shakhtar win, believe me, on Sunday versus Liverpool, we will be flying. Trust me on that, which I thought was interesting. Very bullish, clearly supremely confident in his Arsenal side. And looking at the main markets, I'm not brave enough to take his Arsenal side on. I'd have liked Liverpool at plus 260, but that's long gone now. Get a decent price on both for the draw no bet, which might appeal to some. There was a 2.75 goal line, which I probably would have had a nibble on, but 2.5 is about right. So yeah, I'm not sold on anything in all honesty, which just leaves me with the draw at plus 225. So I'm happy enough to pass and take a watching brief, but gun to head, I'd probably go with the draw.
Okay, so yeah, all of us are sort of seeing this the same way. The 0-0 is around 11-1, so I do think it's definitely worth a little bit of a sprinkle. All right, that brings us to Leicester and Nottingham Forest up next, which gets the slate started over the weekend on Friday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern time. We got some Friday night lights with Leicester as a plus 185 home underdog. Nottingham Forest continues to tear it up, plus 155 for the Tricky Trees. They are on short rest since they played on Monday, and now it's a quick turnaround to Friday. Just getting them prepared for the relentless nature of European football, because that's where Forest is heading, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
They are plus 155. The draw is plus 230. I like Forest here. I just think that they are better than Leicester. They're better. There's enough of a gap between these two teams that the worries about the quick turnaround and going on the road kind of doesn't throw me off. And everything that Nottingham Forest is doing kind of feels and looks legitimate. They're just grinding out wins or grinding out points, and it's working for them. Sitting on 13 from 8, that's the same as Tottenham. The expected goal difference is fine for a team like Forest. Only one defeat on the year. Sam, like, I don't know. I think this number looks quite appealing on Forest.
I think Forest edges it in terms of quality and maybe the likelihood of getting a result over the line. But on the weekend, it was a massive win for Leicester City in maybe the 98th minute, I want to say, with Southampton 2-0 up. And from a Leicester point of view, I suppose what is the most impressive thing is that there is definitely a bit of fight about this Leicester side. Like that there may not be quality there in abundance in each and every position, but there's definitely fight, and we've seen that a few times now under Steve Cooper. Fended off Bournemouth at home, they bagged 2 at the Emirates, so Cooper must have got them in at half time, and in the second half, the game changed largely though through Abdul Fatawu on the right. He came on for Leicester at 0-0, pushed Buonanotte inside, and Fatawu caused all kinds of havoc down that right flank. The left back couldn't cope with him. Hit the woodwork, had a header well saved, which led to a Vardy penalty, and he was just so direct, relentless every time, running in behind the fullback whenever he picked the ball up. And the reason I bring it up is because Leicester will need that. They are going to struggle breaking Forest down. They're going to struggle creating chances. So for me, Steve Cooper has to start Fatawu in this game. They have to really utilize him and make good use of him, because without something like that, without that direct running, without beating a man and creating space, I think they might really struggle. So we've seen Nottingham Forest have been incredibly stingy. And I imagine they will be again on Friday night. 1-0 at home to Palace for them on the weekend. I said last week that they might be in a tricky spot last week with absentees and suspensions, but they were absolutely fine, continuing to impress. They've conceded just 8.81 XGA this season, which is the same as Manchester City after 8 games, and not far off Liverpool in first. So Leicester actually opened as slight favourites here, but now it's Forest slight favourites. The 0.0 Asian handicap line, draw no bet alternative, can be taken around -115. I don't hate that. That's where I've ended up. At the prices, I was also leaning towards a draw, but I'd rather get the Forest win on side as well. And yeah, as mentioned, Leicester will really need a spark to break down that Forest defence. So Cooper's got to start Fatawu. I'm just not sold on them running out comfortable winners here, which is why I'm going to take Forest on the draw no bet.
Yeah, I agree with Sam. I think that Nottingham Forest is a great price here. The thing that was interesting from the Leicester match was how good Southampton was at creating chances via crosses, right? Like they were consistently getting 2v1s outside or just getting their fullbacks, Leicester's fullbacks, into 1v1s, and they were beating them to create a ton of crosses or create chances off of crosses. And that's exactly how Nottingham Forest wants to play. So Leicester this season in 11v11 situations is allowing 2.33 expected goals per 90 minutes. That is the highest mark in the Premier League. On the other end of the spectrum, in those 11v11 situations, they're only averaging 1.07 expected goals per 90 minutes. So the defense has been terrible. The offense really hasn't been able to create much. If you take away the Southampton match, there's only been one other match where they've created over 1 expected goal, and it was against Crystal Palace. I would be not shocked, but it'll take a lot for them to create over 1 expected goal against Nottingham Forest in this match because of how good they have been defensively. And I know Chris Wood is 32 years old, and I know he's been around for a long time, but he's just a good striker. Like, I think we just need to admit it. Like, he is their best striker. He's very, very productive. 19 goals since the start of last season, 0.57 expected goal per 90 minutes scoring rate. And he is a really big threat off of those crosses. So I like him to score at plus 240 as well in this match. He scored against Crystal Palace off of a volley. But, like you said, Michael, there's a clear gap between these two teams right now. And also Leicester has conceded 5 expected goals off a set piece, has only conceded 1 actual goal. Nottingham Forest has been incredibly dangerous off them this season. So not a great spot for Nottingham Forest, having to play on Monday and then Friday. Another team the Premier League's out to get. So I like Nottingham Forest with you guys. Draw no bet, -115.
Okay. That brings us to the biggest, the widest line of the slate. Manchester City is sitting -1,000 at home, taking on Southampton, who are 18-1. The draw here is 11-1. I don't have much here, but I do think that the path you guys are walking down is certainly viable considering what we've seen from City this season, BJ.
I have a trivia question for you guys. Can you tell me the last time Manchester City had a clean sheet in the Premier League?
It was opening day.
Correct.
Yeah.
That was the last time when they held a clean sheet against Chelsea. Other than that, they have conceded a goal.
And was that Rodri guy in the last?
And I don't think that's by coincidence either, because what has happened now that City doesn't have Rodri is Pep has just made a tactical decision that we're just going to press relentlessly and just super aggressively, and we'll just live with getting beat in transition because the reward of their press and turning teams over far outweighs the risk of getting beat in transition. That's kind of what happened this season. So I think that sets up pretty well for Southampton, who have shown over the last couple of matches that they can play direct. Like they can play those balls in behind to Archer, Mateus Fernandez. Like Southampton they're not a bottom feeder offense. Like they have created over 10 expected goals in their 8 matches. They've created 9 big scoring chances. And another big advantage that they'll have over City is on set pieces. Like they almost scored off of one in the beginning of the match against Leicester. They're second in XG per set piece. City's 15th in XG per set piece allowed. And the City defense, not only are they conceding goals, they're allowing 1.07 expected goals per 90 minutes, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but when you compare it to what City was 2 years ago when they were allowing 0.75, like there's a clear dip in their defensive performance. And what happened, last year is their press wasn't good enough, so they started sitting more in a mid block and they stopped just pressing high. Well, now that they don't have Rodri and they don't have that anchor in the middle, they're just like, all right, I guess we're just going to have to play a little bit more high scoring matches and try and press teams because we just don't have the ball winning anymore. So I like Southampton to score here at plus 105. I mean, every team other than Chelsea has scored against City so far. So why not Southampton?
Yeah, I completely agree. You're right. And no Rodri and De Bruyne will affect any 11 in world football, obviously. So we have to bear that in mind. The thing is, City are just so good. So I think there's like a reactionary belief is that, City will be fine. Like, they're that good. They're not going to need Rodri and De Bruyne. But it's definitely not the case. And I think we're seeing the fruits of that now. That's still good enough to win Premier League games, which really says something, yeah, but maybe not as convincingly as they were previously. City have conceded in 7 of 8 of those matches, like you said, BJ. So how to bet on this one? I put this into the sheet. We've got a sheet where we put our bets. I thought I might be going a little bit crazy, but BJ's selection was already in there, saying Southampton to score, which was nice to see. City host Sparta Prague tonight, Wednesday night, and then onto a Saturday afternoon kickoff, and they are priced at minus 1,000 for both fixtures. So yeah, the question you got to ask yourself, how do you approach a game like that? And it has to be on Southampton to score in some way. I've got City to win and both teams to score, and that comes out at plus 137. I'm not sure if we're going to get a Southampton goal, but it looks to be the pick of the bunch from the markets. And what I think we have to see from Russell Martin, that the blueprint is there from both Fulham and Wolves, what they've deployed in recent matches to beat Manchester City or to create goal scoring opportunities, at least against Manchester City. You've got to get the ball forward quickly. You've got to be brave. You've got to commit bodies forward, which is not easy when you're also faced with the possibility of being outnumbered by a City fast break on the back of it in return for committing those bodies upfield. And above all, you've got to get players running out that City back line and turning them and facing them towards their own goals. So if they do that, they will have a chance to score on the weekend. That is just easier said than done. But yeah, City to win, both teams score at plus 137.
Bournemouth travels to Villa Park, where Aston Villa are, as we record this on Wednesday before the Champions League Wednesday matches, are sitting top of the table in the league phase. So Unai Emery, once again, has proven to be an elite tournament manager. But now he's got a quick turnaround as a minus 110 favorite against the Bournemouth side that should be buoyant after their upset against Arsenal. Cherries plus 280, draw here is plus 290. I would lean towards Bournemouth at these prices and the situation for Villa. I thought maybe that the number would get a little bit higher, especially after what we saw from Villa in the midweek. Maybe it gets there, but I think just the cat's obviously out of the bag with this Bournemouth team, especially after the win over Arsenal. So those two market forces are kind of canceling each other out. But nonetheless, it would be Bournemouth here for me, BJ. I do think that they're an intriguing price at plus 280 on the money line.
Yeah, I like Bournemouth here. I think this type of match is very interesting because, I think a lot of people will just say, well, Aston Villa has always been really good at Villa Park, so they obviously, have the advantage there. But when you look through their matches this season at Villa Park, it's not honestly that great. Like, they lost to Arsenal. They needed to come from behind 2 goals to beat Everton. They needed to come from behind against Wolves to beat them. They got completely outplayed by Bayern. They put up a dud against Manchester United, and then they beat Bologna in a very boring match. Like, it hasn't been like these completely dominant performances from Villa. And the one match that kind of reigns in my mind, because Bournemouth's press has been the best of anybody in the Premier League so far. They are turning opponents over in dangerous areas at the highest rate. And what Bournemouth's press does is they try to force you to one side of the pitch. They use the touchline as an extra defender, and they cause all sorts of havoc and either turn you over or force you to play more direct. Now, Villa doesn't want to play more direct. Like, they were forced to against Bayern, and, Johan Duran had a banger. But other than that, Bayern had a pass per defensive action of 5.8 and forced 9 high turnovers against Aston Villa. And I think Bournemouth can honestly do the same. So now we're in a situation that, like you said, Michael, the price is a little bit short here on Villa. They're obviously pricing in the fact that not only is Bournemouth good, but Villa is on short rest after having to play on Tuesday. But I still do like the price here on Bournemouth. I have Villa at around plus 115. So it's a very, very small play for me. But the one thing that kept before I decided to make the decision was that, okay, Villa's going to play that very compact defensive structure and play the high line. And the teams that struggle against that are teams that want to play out of the back and play a lot of short passes because there's not any space in between the lines. The teams that have hurt them, like Everton, for example, are teams that can play that direct ball up to the forwards. And that's what Bournemouth does a lot with Even Nielsen. So I think this is a great matchup for them. I really like them here. So I like them plus a half at minus 102.
All right. We can move on to Brighton and Wolves next. The Seagulls are a pretty sizable favorite here, minus 170 at home. Wolves still winless at the foot of the table on 1 point, plus 425. The draw is plus 325 here. I think Wolves are worth a bet here, Sam. It's partly that, like, there's no reason that this team should be on 1 point. Like, they're better than this. We believe in the manager, Gary O'Neill, as well. Like, it's a little bit confounding. The numbers aren't great for Wolverhampton. Like, I'm not saying like they've got like some positive expected goal difference or anything like that, but that when you look at their underlying numbers, it does suggest that there is something. There's something coming for them that they deserve better. And also, like, the stretch of games that they played is just brutal. Arsenal, Chelsea, Forest, who we now know is pretty competent team, Newcastle, Villa, Liverpool, Brentford, City. Like, it's just been a murderer's row for a team to start the season. And I know Brighton's pretty good, so you can add another tough opponent to that list. But I do think they're gettable, Brighton. They've had ups and downs in the Hertzler era. They've only lost one match, but I do think like Wolves has a little bit more teeth to it than these odds would imply. And it's not like this Brighton defense is like pitching shutout after shutout after shutout. So give me Wolves.
Yeah, the scheduling's disgusting, really, from a Wolves point of view. I don't know if it was like a Birmingham City fan that knocked up the fixtures in the summer, but it definitely feels like it. We've seen Wolves, they've shown in flashes that they're still a good team, regardless of how their season has panned out. Dangerous up top on occasions. Larson looks like a good addition. Obviously, Cunha's still knocking about. He's a very good footballer at this level. I saw a stat actually just before coming on. Wolves have lost their last 5 Premier League matches, but have scored in each match, and there hasn't been a 6-game run like that since the 60s. So there's history on the line here as well, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happens again, because Brighton at home, they're a better team. The way things are going form-wise, you'd back Brighton to probably get one over on Wolves. I just feel that I don't have a bet in this. I'm passing. Like, I just feel that Wolves will click back into a run soon enough. We know they've got favourable fixtures coming up from next weekend. I just don't want to risk backing them that this will be the game they do it. I don't want to risk that against Brighton at home, and I don't really want to take Brighton on the nose at -167 either. And it's another 3.0 goal line, which is the standard in this division now. So overall, it's a pass from me, but I am hoping they either get a result this weekend or next weekend is when they really start picking up points.
Wolves is about -150-ish in that range to stay up right now. So if they lose this match, you might get down into the -130, -125 range. And I would definitely hit that at that point because you mentioned the schedule. Here's what they got coming up until Boxing Day. Crystal Palace, Southampton, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, West Ham, Ipswich, Leicester, Manchester United. Like they've played all their hard matches so far. So if they can pick up even 2 or 3 wins in that type of stretch, they're going to fly up the table and they're going to be sitting in 14th place by the time we reach the new year. So I think the way to play it is if they lose this match and you can get anything under -150 for Wolves to stay up. I know the underlying metrics have not been good, but they're a way more talented team than some of the teams near the bottom of the table. So I think that's the way to play Wolves.
Brighton and Ipswich up next. Brentford and Ipswich up next. Brentford -145 at home. Ipswich traveling +360. The draw is +320. Pretty hefty price you got to play here on Brentford, Sam, but it's not going to deter you.
I think it's a pretty good price, yeah. I don't really mind it. I've gone for Brentford -0.7 Asian at -110 just to get a little bit more juice in the price, and because I think there probably will be goals here at the G-Tech. On the weekend against United, they went ahead, Brentford, from that Pinnock header whilst De Ligt was off the pitch, cracking header from a good corner. But they did really struggle in the second half, and they only mustered 2 attempts at goal and 0.16 XG in that second half, even though they were trailing from the hour mark. But I think if that was at the G-Tech, and it's a lot of ifs and buts, but if that was at home, I think that game would turn out a little differently because they are much better at home. They're much more comfortable. They score lots of goals at home. And Brentford have actually lost all 4 Premier League away games so far. It's only them and Southampton are the 2 teams with 0 points after 4 games on the road. But at home, after just beating Wolves 5-3 a fortnight ago, Brentford actually have 10 points from 4 games, which is second to only Arsenal on goal difference if we were to take home fixtures only into account. So it's night and day in that respect. And I just think they'll have too much for Ipswich. You saw Everton outfoxed Kieran McKenna's men on the weekend, and it looked very much like you had a plucky promoted Premier League club in one corner versus like a battle-hardened, been through the ringer, know the old dance type of Premier League club in the other. And they took their chances. Everton won the midfield battle, and there was just a touch more quality overall in the away dressing room. So I feel, looking ahead to this game, I feel like that is how it might play out again here, with Brentford loving life in front of their own fans. Brentford at -143 at home on the weekend. Like, it might be a bit short for the podcast, but I think it's an all right price. The Asian line's where I've ended up. So yeah, if you think there's going to be goals and you think Brentford will wedge in front, that Asian line's it's a pretty good way in, I think.
I agree. And I have a stat for you, kind of going along the lines of what you said, Sam, about Brentford at home. So typically what Brentford does in these type of scenarios is, Brentford is typically under Thomas Frank, a 3-5-2 direct counterattacking team. But when they face teams where they think they can control possession, they'll switch to a 4-3-3. They'll bring on an extra attacker, and they've been really, really good against teams against worse off teams than them. So since the start of the 2022-23 season, Brentford against teams in the bottom half of the table are 13-8-2, and they have a plus 16.1 expected goal differential. They are so good at home against these bad teams in the bottom half of the table, and Ipswich fits that mold very, very well. Brentford beat all 3 newly promoted teams at home last season. They created over 3 expected goals against Luton Town and against Burnley. And it's just the same story every week with Ipswich Town. Like, they're just not that good. They're trying to play the way they did in the championship. And you even saw it. Everton created their biggest chance of the match. I know Calvert-Lewin didn't score it, but they turned them over high and they got a quick counterattacking opportunity. And Brentford has shown many times this season that they are a team that wants to press high now and cause a lot of problems. If you don't believe me, go watch the Southampton match, because they did that over and over and over again. So for Ipswich, who, by the way, have conceded over 17 expected goals and 17 big scoring chances in only 8 matches, and are pretty bad at defending set pieces as well, 14th in XG per set piece, and conceded a goal to Everton off the direct result of a set piece. Like, this is a horrible match for them. So I have Brentford projected north of -200. So I think this is a slam spot here for Brentford. I think that they're set up really, really well to get all 3 points from this match.
Okay, that brings us to Everton and Fulham, the Marco Silva derby. Everton, it's basically a pick'em on the 3-way line. Everton is +170, so a slight home underdog. Fulham +160. The draw here is +230. We were talking about Arsenal, Liverpool, perhaps being underwhelming just in terms of, like, from a watching perspective. I think this match has a lot of potential to be maybe the most exciting on the board in terms of, like, goals and scoring chances, Sam. I do think that both of these teams will give a real go. Everton should be feeling much better about themselves going into the weekend after the win at Ipswich. They played a lot better of late. We kind of saw this coming, but Fulham have been just really just competitive every time they step onto the pitch. So you're looking at goals. I think that's probably the right way to play it here.
Yeah, I agree with you, but so I'm glad you said that. But the bookmakers, they have this under 2.5 goal line, which is the smallest in the Premier League this weekend, and both teams to score is at -143. So I didn't really get that over 2.5 at -10. So that was a bit confusing. So it was a standout for me. And Everton, like you said, they've got their show on the road this season after what was a tricky start to the campaign. 8 points in their last 4 games, 2 wins coming in that time against Palace at home, Ipswich away. And only once have Everton gone 5 games unbeaten under Sean Dyche. So they'll be quietly confident they can match that here, although Fulham is a difficult test at present. Been playing brilliantly, and we've been bigging them up on the podcast most weeks. I feel like I need to bring up that first Fulham goal from assist from the keeper, where he's just punted it over Villa's high line like Route 1 proper football. You'll see that at Sunday League level in England, up and down the country this weekend. I just love that. We need to see more of that, I think. So that was actually Bernd Leno assist that season, joined Edison as the only 2 keepers to have 1 assist this season. So that's a bit of fun. I don't feel comfortable taking on either side in terms of result. I can see this game swinging back and forth, and 3 points really could end up on either side. We could make a good case for both teams finding some joy, I think. So that's why I've ended up on the over 2.5 line. Everton are right near the bottom of the Premier League for underlying attacking figures with 8.73 XG, but it feels like the tide is turning. And if they go behind, or even if they go in front, I really can see a response from both Everton and Fulham, depending which way the first goal goes. And this could rumble into something pretty exciting.
Yeah, I agree. The Marco Silva derby. This should be a lot of fun. Last season, these 2 teams played twice in the Premier League and once in the, I think it was League Cup or FA Cup. I can't remember which one. But the 2 Premier League matches, there was only 1 total goal between the 2. But there were 7.7 expected goals. So there were chances left and right. And Sam, I'm so happy to hear you say that we need more Route 1 football, because we truly do. We do.
We really do.
We talk about the game being gone. It's gone because we don't have Route 1 football, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Fulham have shown that not only can they be a team that can actually play out of the back, but like you said, Sam, they can play Route 1 football as well. And I think Route 1 football is what they're going to kind of have to do here against Everton, or do what they do best, which is get overloads in wide areas, 2v1s, over and underlapping runs out wide, because Everton have conceded the most crosses of anybody into the penalty area so far, and Fulham have completed the most. And I think the reason why you're seeing that, Michael, is because Branthwaite has been out. He's their best aerial defender by far, and Michael Keane just isn't at this point in his career. Branthwaite's questionable, and it sounds like they're kind of holding him back a little bit because he re-injured himself when they brought him in against Crystal Palace. So they're kind of taking it a little bit slow. So I'd honestly be kind of surprised if you see Branthwaite actually start in this match. But in any case, the Everton defense, they've put up good defensive performances against teams like Ipswich, Leicester, and Crystal Palace. But against everybody else, they're conceding over 2 expected goals per 90 minutes. And it's just because, again, like I said, they just can't defend crosses. Now, for Fulham's perspective, Sasa Lucic is out. He's their best ball-winning midfielder. Like, they start Smith Rowe and Pereira, and now they're going to start Sander Berge, who is not a great ball winner in terms of stopping people in transition. If you don't believe me, he was the main guy in the middle for Burnley last season, and how did that end up? They were one of the worst defensive teams in the Premier League. So I agree with you, Sam. I like over 2.5 here. I think that this game is going to be very back and forth, very transitional, which typically when these two, when these type of matches happen and two teams want to play very direct, more often than not, it ends up in a high-scoring match than a low-scoring. So I'm with you, Sam. I like over 2.5.
Yeah. A lot of love for Route 1 football. And, of course, we had a Chris Wood mention. So we are proper Barclays men here. Which brings us to Chelsea and Newcastle. Chelsea minus 125 at home. Newcastle traveling at plus 290. The draw here is plus 310. Not too much for me here, BJ. On this one, I think it looks about right.
Yeah, I've decided to have some fun here. I think I like over 3.5 at plus 123. So, Newcastle they've been interesting this season, right? Because I think we all kind of expected this ascension up into battling for the top 4, and that just hasn't happened yet. And I thought they were really good against Brighton. They were completely dominating them for the first 35 minutes. And then I love it. The announcer said once Danny Welbeck got the goal, I said, well, that's football. Brighton's first attack, they score after Newcastle had just hammered their net over and over and over again. And it's true. Because Newcastle is trying to become a team that can control matches more. They're trying to build out of the back more. And Newcastle finally has their peak midfield. Joe Linton, Guimaraes, and Sandro Tonali. So I think they feel that they can actually build out of the back a little bit more. But in this type of match, it would behoove them and it would be much better for them to play very, very direct, because you saw Liverpool have a lot of success against Chelsea by playing those direct balls because Chelsea wants to go man-to-man across the pitch. So either one of two things are going to happen. Either Newcastle, I think, is going to try to build out of the back and they're going to turn it over to Chelsea, who has been a good high-pressing team, or they're going to be able to be very good with those type of direct balls up to the forwards. So the flip side of it, though, is Chelsea has been very good offensively this season, and especially being at home. And Newcastle has not been good away from home for a very long time now. And defending in that 4-5-1, I mean, Newcastle's got to press Chelsea. They got to come out and they got to take the game to them. Which, if they sit in that 4-5-1 and Chelsea's able to overload them, and Palmer is able to find space in between the lines, like they're in big time trouble. So I thought, let's have some fun. Over 3.5 at plus 123. I probably wouldn't play it, anything short of plus 115, because it does make me a little nervous, with these two teams playing a little bit more low event type matches. But Newcastle's also way, way overdue to score 5.6 expected goals in their last 3 matches. They've only scored once. So over 3.5 at plus 123.
Anything here, Sam, before we move on?
Yeah, I'm glad BJ's having a bit of fun, because I've just got a few bullet points in front of me saying I'm going to pass. I'm not sure on either team, etc., etc. I do have a stat, though, which is fairly interesting, which is Chelsea are the only team in Premier League history to get 8 games into a season without using anyone over the age of 27. which
This
says
is what
a
they
lot.
wanted,
Makes me
though.
feel a
This
little
is
bit
what they
old.
wanted.
Yeah. So there we go. No bets, but I've got stats for you. So
you do have a bet in the next one, though, which is Crystal Palace hosting Tottenham. Palace is plus 300 at home. Spurs minus 125. The draw here is plus 295. I'm very tempted by Crystal Palace here because I want to buy low on this team. And I know that opportunity is not going to come next week against Wolves. I think that's going to be a Really tricky one to handicap. And then it's Fulham. This looks like a decent spot to bet them at home against a gettable defense, but a team that can also just run you off the park on their day. I can't get there, but you do have a bet here playing into it being a fun one to watch.
Yeah, I think so. This is a tough one for me. I'm also fairly confident that Palace comes good. Am I confident enough to back a Palace win? No, similar to you. But I am confident enough that they're going to give it absolutely everything and have enough to get on the score sheet at home against a leaky Spurs side. Saying that, they've only scored, I think it's 5 goals in this season, which is the lowest total of all 20 clubs. So that's a concern with over 2.5 goals and both teams to score at -120. But I'm going to go for it because in the other corner in Tottenham, we've got last game on the weekend, Son, Solanke and Johnson up top with Maddison and Kulusevski just in behind, like drifting in centrally and out wide. It's such a good attacking setup. You got Kulusevski cutting in from the left, and now Heung-min Son over on the left instead of Timo Werner, which is just a massive upgrade. And he's so clinical in like the most important of moments, and it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable in terms of backing Tottenham. So I was looking at the -120 price on Tottenham just to win, but the more I thought about it, the more it felt a little bit trappy, and I've been burned by Tottenham so many times in the past that I just thought maybe it makes more sense just siding with goals, because we know Tottenham's going to score. Pretty sure Tottenham's going to score. And we know going backwards towards your own goal, they are not watertight. So I've ended up on both teams scoring over 2.5 goals. What I would say is maybe like a player prop around Son to score or Son shots on target, because he, like I said, he adds so much to the Spurs side. Really clinical, captain, leader on the pitch, like lifts the standards of those around him, and he showed that against West Ham. So if you're looking for something a little bit different, maybe Son in the prop markets.
All right, and finally, that brings us to West Ham and Manchester United. West Ham plus 185 at home. United plus 140. The draw here is plus 250. I don't think we'll be alone in seeing this match this way, BJ. But all three of us are going to back something that is conducive to a lot of scoring and maybe some poor defense from these two teams, which we never see.
Yeah, I like what you put in the sheet, Michael. 1 million goals, because that's how I feel as well. I mean, United continually, week after week. Listen, they were good in the second half against Brentford. But my goodness, their press still sucks. Like, it really does. Like, it's not connected. You know, if they really wanted to, just go full bore, go full man to man. But I think Ten Hag just continually overthinks it, and they did go man to man in the second half against Brentford when they fell behind, and they were actually really, really successful. And if they do that here against West Ham, like, they will turn West Ham over, who's still trying to build out of the back. But what also happened in that first half, and I kind of laughed as I was watching the match, is United reverted back to their old ways. Because if you remember towards the end of last season, it was just, we can't control matches, so we're just going to get in a back and forth encounter with whoever. It doesn't matter. And they were doing that with Brentford, and it wasn't working. And who's to say that doesn't happen here against West Ham if their press isn't good enough, or if they believe they can hit West Ham in transition? Because West Ham has allowed the most transition shots by like a wide margin of anybody in the Premier League. They are so bad at defending in transition. So I wouldn't be surprised if United decides to do that in this match. On the other end of the spectrum, no kudos for West Ham, but they brought in Somerville over the summer, who I think Sam will agree with me was probably the best winger in the championship last year. So the drop off from kudos to him really isn't as far as it would have been in previous seasons for West Ham. So they have a ton going forward here in their attack to really rip United apart, who has kind of overperformed defensively. 8 goals allowed off of 11 expected. And Sam mentioned on our last podcast, but United has drastically underperformed offensively this season. They're at 7 goals off of about 13 expected. So you would expect that positive regression to come. And what better team to come against than one of the worst defensive teams in the league in West Ham? So Yeah, over 3 at -110 for me. I projected 3.7 goals for this match, so hopefully there's a ton of goals.
Both teams score over 2.5 goals for me at -139, but could have easily taken that Asian goal line like BJ. I'm probably going to rinse and repeat what I said last week. West Ham, good in attack. West Ham, bad in defence. Goals at either ends, you would imagine. United potentially back in a goal scoring rhythm, maybe. Got Højlund back in the team, first league goal of the season, and for his goal, you see Fernandez's flick around the corner, which was exceptional, really, and Højlund's finish was just as impressive. So, very, very good winner for United, and we do our fair share of putting Ten Hag's United down. So, I thought I'd pay them a little credit. Rashford looked bright against Brentford, excellent assist, good signs for United. Like I said, Højlund really added something on his return, and Garnacho was super effective off the left as well. So definitely a few positives on the weekend. West Ham and goals at home, I think we should just keep backing it until we see a reason not to. 4 out of 4 games have gone over 2.5 goals at the London Stadium, and 5 out of 8 have gone over 2.5 goals overall in the Premier League. So 3 goals for BJ's pick will get you a push on the Asian line, and maybe 3 goals will get us a win if they're shared out evenly with the both teams to score and over 2.5 goals. But yeah, there's a few ways of playing it. I would expect there to be goals on the weekend.
Okay. Before we get to our underdog parlay, we'll take a quick jaunt around Europe with BJ. The headliner is El Clasico, but there's a pretty big match in Serie A as well. What do you got for us?
Yeah, let's start with El Clasico, because I kind of like over 3.5. You can get it at +135 as the highest price. I mean, that Real Madrid Dortmund match was hilarious on Tuesday. It was so good. It was so perfect. And what you saw Real Madrid do over and over again is what they can do to Barcelona. Now, we are recording this before Barcelona plays Bayern Munich, which I think is a very, very important match and a good register for what Barcelona is right now, because like we said in our Champions League podcast, Barcelona hasn't played anybody near the level of Bayern Munich or Real Madrid yet. But what they were able to do is they did, over the top balls out wide to the wingers. They did it to Vinicius Jr. over and over and over again, and he just got into 1v1 situations. Because Barcelona wants to overload the middle sometimes with 8 guys, they just leave the wide areas completely exposed. So, and that's just, that's a risk versus reward thing that Hansi Flick just lives with, because they're so good offensively when they have that overload. But against a team like Real Madrid, I don't think that's going to work. Now, Real Madrid has shown their vulnerabilities defensively, and I think that, especially with those crosses from out wide and the wingers that Barcelona has with Rafinha and Lamine Yamal, I think it's just going to be chaos. And I think once you see that first goal go in, similar to the Dortmund match, just everything just gets thrown out the window, and it just becomes very, very back and forth. So I like over 3.5 in El Clasico. Another huge match in Serie A, Inter Juventus. Juventus was horrible against Stuttgart. Bad call by us, Michael, on Tuesday. And the thing is Nico Gonzalez, Koop Miners are both out now for Juventus, along with Bremer. So they're a little bit limited in terms of their best players actually being available. But that was just the second goal that they have, or third goal that they have allowed from open play in 11v11 situations this season. They still have not allowed a non-penalty goal in Serie A, which is just hilarious and crazy to think about. And who's to say they don't just sit in here against Inter and just dare Inter to break them down? Under 2.5 is set at like -150, like -160 in that range. Both teams to score no is sitting at -110. And I wouldn't be shocked if this match ends 1-0 either way. So both teams to score no in that one. And then finally in Germany, Frankfurt, draw no bet, +103 at Union Berlin. Frankfurt's been actually pretty good this season. They have a positive expected goal differential. Their last 2 matches they've played, they drew Bayern, and then they got outplayed by Leverkusen. But in matches not against Dortmund, Leverkusen, or Bayern, they have completely dominated everybody else in the Bundesliga. And I think, Michael, we have an old friend managing Union Berlin right now. Bo Svensson is managing them. And I think they're in the wrong league, because their matches are averaging 1.7 non-penalty expected goals per 90. I think they belong in LaLiga or Serie A right now. They don't belong in the Bundesliga. But in any case, they've been pretty poor when they've had to step up in competition. This is not the Union Berlin team of a couple years ago that finished in the top 4. So I like Frankfurt on the road. I think they should be favored. So I like them drawing a bet at +103.
All right. Nothing from us in the lower leagues. Just licking our wounds from Plymouth Argyle getting
Yeah, that was
hammered.
bad.
I
But
do have a bet if you want me to quickly go over it.
oh yeah, you do.
Yes.
Yeah, so as you're going through Europe, I just realised that I didn't have a bet ready for the pod in the Championship, which is literally my only job each week. So very unprofessional of me. But luckily, I know that Sheffield United are at home and you can back them at -120 against Stoke, which I'm fine with. Sheffield United, very, very stingy in terms of defensive XGA. Don't have the numbers in front of me for obvious reasons, but they are very good defensively. And they've got real quality up top at this level too. Stoke City have looked open in recent fixtures under new management, and that continued against Bristol City last night. They went 2-0 ahead and then conceded 2 to draw. If you let 2 goals in against Sheffield United, then you are bang in trouble, and you might not be able to overturn that deficit. So Sheffield United, money line, -120.
Perfect. That brings us to the Underdog Parlay. This one is going to come out to about 64 to 1. Sam, you can get us started.
Brentford win and both teams to score +225. I feel Brentford will have too much for Ipswich at home. Struggled at Old Trafford last time out, but it has been night and day in terms of home and away form. Brentford is second behind Arsenal with 10 points from 4 games. If we look at the Premier League home form table, away from home, they're 19th with 4 losses from 4. So now back on home soil, confident playing on their own patch. I think we might see a gulf between these sides in terms of going forward and creating chances at this level. Only 6.31 XG created by Ipswich from 8 Premier League games. That is the worst in the division, and that's why we can get this pick in the realms of an underdog pick price-wise. So Brentford, yeah, they've conceded 15 goals in 8 games, so they're not exactly watertight either. Brentford win and both teams to score.
I'm going to go with Wolverhampton as a +425 underdog against Brighton on the road. Wolves have lost 5 on the spin. It hasn't been pretty for them to start the season. They're at the bottom of the Premier League table with just 1 point, but here's a list of their opponents so far. Arsenal, Chelsea, Nottingham Forest, Newcastle, Aston Villa, Liverpool, Brentford, and Manchester City. So we really just don't know anything about this Wolves team 8 matches into the season. I do expect them to start to climb their way towards the top of the table. And we do know that this Brighton side, yeah, they've got plenty of potential. They could beat anybody on their day, but they also have the potential of giving up plenty of scoring chances. We saw that last week when they gave up nearly 2 XG to Newcastle. They've gave up 4 goals to Chelsea a couple weeks ago. So this is a gettable defense. I think a spot that Wolves will have circled as a potential opportunity to claw their way out of the basement of the Premier League. And I like the price on a team that will be just naturally undervalued by the way they started the season. So give me Wolverhampton, BJ.
Yeah, I like Bournemouth +280 on the road against Aston Villa. Honestly, a pretty good matchup here for Bournemouth, who has been the best pressing team in the Premier League. They're forcing opponents to turn the ball over in dangerous areas at the highest rate of anybody in the league so far. And Aston Villa, the one match that they have played against an elite pressing team was Bayern Munich. And Bayern Munich in that match had a pass per defensive action of 5.8 and turned Aston Villa over high 9 times and basically neutralized Aston Villa's buildup and forced them to play very, very direct. And the one thing about Aston Villa's defense, because they play that high line, teams that are able to play direct balls over the top have caused them a lot of problems. That's how Fulham scored their first goal over the weekend against Aston Villa. And Bournemouth does that over and over again with Evan Nielsen. So I think this is a great matchup here for Bournemouth on the road, and I like the price on them at +280.
Like I said, 64 to 1 on that one to come good. Bring us to our favorite bets in the Premier League this weekend, BJ. You could get us started.
Brentford -140 at home against Ipswich. Brentford is so good in these type of situations. They typically play out of a 3-5-2 when they're underdogs, but when they're favored and they think they can control possession, they will switch to a 4-3-3 and play more attacking football. And it's paid off. Since the start of the 2022-23 season, Brentford is 13-8-2 at home against teams in the bottom half of the table and have a +16.1 expected goal differential. It's the same story every single week with Ipswich Town. They're just a horrible, horrible Premier League team. They're continually trying to build out of the back, and they either turn the ball over or they're not be able to create anything offensively. They have the lowest amount of expected goals and have conceded the most expected goals in the Premier League. That's not where you want to be as a team trying to fight off relegation. So I have Brentford projected north of minus 200. So I think there's a lot of value on them at minus 140.
I'm going to go with Nottingham Forest plus 155. I know the schedule spot's a little tough after playing on Monday. Now, quick turnaround to play Friday on the road in Leicester. But I do just trust that this Forest team is a professional outfit at this point, and they're much better than Leicester City. Leicester is defensively their sieve. They've given up 21 expected goals against on the season, depending on where you look. And that is bottom of the Premier League table. And it just doesn't take all that much for Nottingham Forest to win. If they can get 1 or 2 on the board, they should be able to see this one out. I know that Leicester's been a lot pluckier than we expected to start the season, but I think they'll need a little bit more than that to beat this really, really robust Nottingham Forest side. I'm going to back them to continue their really strong start to the season, Sam.
Yes, I'm going Everton versus Fulham over 2.5 goals, minus 110. This is the lowest goal line of the weekend at over 2.5 goals, and I'm not sure that's right. We saw a 1-0 and 0-0 in the head-to-heads last season, which will put people off instantly. But if you analyse those two matchups last term, involving similar personnel and management, you had 0-0 last time out in Fulham, but there were 25 Fulham shots to 21 from Everton and 3.78 accumulated XG overall. And the game before at Goodison, 1-0 to Fulham on the road with 28 match shots and 4.23 XG accumulated in a very kind of transitional heavy game. So these two will turn up and both have a right good go. I'm sure of that. We just need them to take their chances and land what is a generous goal line in the Premier League on the weekend.
Perfect. All right, that does it for this match week 9 betting preview for the Premier League. Best of luck with all your bets. We'll be back again next week. We'll continue to do our Champions League shows over the weekend as well. Until then, good luck. Thank you to our producer, Noah. Please rate, review, and subscribe. It helps a lot. For Sam and BJ, I'm Michael.